Hey, what is going on, folks? We're here to check out another Warhammer video. If you guys don't know, I take notes along the way. So I have just concluded checking out some Tyranid notes. My Tyranid notes are actually pretty small. Tyranids usually send Geon stealers ahead of time to destabilize your planet and then go out. And they have a whole bunch of other Tyranids and they go on a destruction and they enter the galaxy from different points, implying we are surrounded. Yeah, that's the lore right now. I find them to be a very straightforward. Lots of details though, but it is what it is. So I've checked out a lot of major kills, Tau Empire, and now I want to check out Westhammers, whose videos tend to be a little longer. The information is, I'm gonna call it more informative, but harder to follow when they're longer videos, where for us people with ADHD, major kill tends to keep waking you up, so to speak. There's a point, sometimes you zone out, you're overthinking or whatever. Major Kill says something like, yo, what? Anyways, but yo, Wes Hammer, great dude, phenomenal information, also entertaining. And let's just check the guy out. If you haven't subscribed to either channels, go ahead and do so. Y'all are new to Wes Hammer or to Warhammer because you just follow me. Check him out. I think he's a fantastic content creator. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been reacting to his videos. And obviously, subscribe to this channel too. Let's jump into it.
Perception in the Warhammer universe that every faction is inherently evil. The reality is that everybody is capable of great good and terrible acts. Some, however, are far worse than others.
Drukhari.
But there's actually a faction that blurs
gotta
this
check out the
line even
Drukhari.
more. One that seems to actively value peace and diplomacy, which is an incredible rarity in the 40K universe. They're everybody's lovable space communists that are obsessed with anime.
More of the anime jokes together.
But it's
That
weird
seems so
because
cool.
they clearly have never seen an anime because every single one of their mechs doesn't have a giant sword. And they're also not communists because they have a caste system and are ruled by a ruling class. But is this faction actually benevolent, or is there something sinister going on under the surface? Let's talk about the Tau Empire.
This is how I do it. I'll see titles, so I'm like, I want to check that out. So I got what I want. Alright, that's good. Oh. There is no victory without unity, no peace when there is conflict. In this dark time, we can only forget our differences and fight the darknesses together. I like that quote. Is that one worth writing down? There is no victory without unity. Yeah. That's a quote worth writing down. Man, that's a great one. If you're wondering why that quote got me, it says, there is no victory without unity. It's like, what are we fighting for? No peace when there's conflict. These are obvious stuff, but it almost sets the stage that why are we fighting still here? Because there's no unity. That's why we have to invade that neighboring country and recreate our former empire so that there can be peace. In this dark time, we can only forget our differences and fight the darkness together. Yes, perfect. Okay. I like this.
So in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, where every single faction is in a never-ending war of survival, all species, including humanity, is capable of great, reprehensible evil. The Tau on their surface seem completely benevolent. They stand in stark contrast to pretty much every other faction, as they actively believe in peace and diplomacy. They're a faction that will pursue peaceful negotiations 100 ways from Sunday before declaring war. And in truth, they are a relatively small faction, but advance at nearly supernatural levels, having gone from discovering fire to being a spacefaring galactic presence in the span of about 3,000 years.
Wow.
Now, they are relatively new
pretty
to the
fast.
galaxy, and being such a young race are often perceived as naive by their bitter and hardened galactic neighbors, some of which have been warring throughout the cosmos for millions of years. And as in time-honored fashion, they believe that there is no peace amongst the stars. It almost seems too good to be true, a race that actually cares about peace and diplomacy and uniting the stars rather than dividing them through conquest. The grim darkness of the 41st millennium is characterized by violence and hatred. Or maybe
Violence and
there's
hatred.
something going on under the surface. Maybe the Tau aren't as benevolent as they appear to be. So,
You know, I just gotta say, unless he says otherwise, now I have more information from the major kill part. My understanding is they're less susceptible to the powers of chaos, like their soul is weaker and stuff like that. And I'm like, is that a correlation to also being gooder or more peaceful? And I want to say, a stronger a soul is, the more susceptible it is to falling to chaos. Also, as a race, they might be more violent or prone to being violent, prone to being evil.
let's take a deep dive and let's get to the bottom of this and figure out what the motives of this peace-loving fish people actually is. So I think the first thing that we should establish about the Tau is that although the bulk of them are represented by a species that shares the same name, what we know of as the Tau Empire actually incorporates many different races. You can think of them
Tau
like a
Empire.
covenant from the Halo series, a coalition, so to speak, of many different races under one banner.
That's why the
pursuing same
unity.
goals.
I like
Now,
that.
some of the other common species you'll see amongst them are the carnivorous bird-like Kroot or the skittering insect-like Vespid that accompany Tau forces in war. They are two of many species that have joined the Tau Empire willingly through peaceful negotiation and mutual goals. Kroot, for example, joined the Tau when their species in Homeworld was being besieged by an orc wog. The Tau forces who had been observing them came to their aid and saved the Kroot, pushing back the orc wog. Afterwards, the Kroot agreed to join the Empire as they had owed them a great debt. Now, don't get it twisted. Despite their seemingly good intentions, the Tau
Yeah, I'm about to
are
join the Tau.
conquerors, just like everyone else. However, there are alternatives when it comes to taking territory. The Tau understand that all-out war does more damage than good, preferring to pursue peace and diplomacy and exhaust all options before employing the use of violence. And compared to the tactics employed by even the Imperium of Man, this would seem pretty benevolent by contrast. You
Nah,
see, every
for real.
member of the Tau Empire follows the philosophy of the greater good, also
The
known
greater
as the Tau
good.
Va. Now, this philosophy
The Tau Va. Give me a second. This is
of the
lore
Tau
I'm here
Empire
for.
follows the philosophy of the greater
The greater good.
good, also known as the Tau Va.
That. I gotta have that. And I also kind of apologize that I pause. You know what I mean? For me, it's just easier because I'm not gonna remember where to come back to. And then I could cut this out from the video, but then it actually makes it too much to keep up with, and then I just fall apart. So that's just that. The Tau Va, or the greater good, is what the Tau believe in. I like that. I really do. Because of its implications for their greater good. I actually am a big fan of weaponizing great philosophies for evil. I know. Where's my Millennium Rod? Hold on. So things like peace through strength. Why did you do it? To send a message. For there could be no peace if a nation cannot demonstrate its strength. I love that kind of propaganda. Got my Millennium Rod ready for it. All right, let's continue. I'm excited. Very excited today. Some days I have energy, other days
Now,
I
this
don't.
philosophy deems that every action an individual takes should do the most good for the most people.
The most good
Now,
for
this
the
often
most
represents
people.
the galaxy at large, but normally is more focused on doing good for the Tau Empire, as every species is welcomed within its ranks if they accept the way of the greater good.
I
Now,
accept
every
the way
Tau
of the greater
citizen
good.
believes in this message wholeheartedly, and that giving themselves over to the pursuit of the greater good is the best path for any individual. Furthermore, they believe that it is their sacred duty to spread this creed throughout the galaxy and unite all species
there
under its
it
banner.
is. There
When
it
we compare this
is.
to the Imperium's way of conquering the galaxy, that is to say, destroying
For the
anyone
greater
that gets in
good.
their way, based on the fundamental belief that the galaxy at large is the birthright of mankind, and to
Nah.
suffer not the heretic, the witch, or the alien
Nah.
to live.
Nah.
You can start to see the major difference in philosophy here.
I'm
And make
enjoying
no
the Tau.
mistake, this is still conquering by enforcing their beliefs on others. But their beliefs encourage peace and unity, rather than an eradication of everything
Or
that doesn't
take
look like
this
you.
laser cannon.
And where the Tau got such a wacky notion that you're more likely to survive the 41st millennium with allies rather than enemies, I have no idea. It's anybody's guess.
Now, one of the main
No, it
pillars
only
of the
makes
Tau
sense.
Va is that the Tau Empire must always be expanding. that the greater good must be taught to as many people as possible.
Oh,
And
there
it's
it
not enough for the
is.
Tau to simply sit back and wait for other sentient species to come to them in search of enlightenment. No, they must bring it to the galaxy at large. It's as
There
if
it
they
is.
seek to eliminate opposing views through enlightenment and conversion, rather than through a genocidal crusade like other species.
To enlightenment and
Using violence
conversion.
only as a last resort or to defend their worlds. That being said, violence is a tool that could be used to spread peace. Listen, we're gonna bombard your planet, but we're gonna do it peacefully and in the name of the greater good. So, you know, it's okay. They believe that the message of the greater good must be brought to every civilization,
I
and for all
love it.
sentient species to be brought under its banner.
I love
and
it.
seemingly as if masters
For the
of
greater
manipulation,
good.
they understand the core fundamentals of getting someone to alter their views.
I love
That is,
it.
the individual is more likely to adhere to your beliefs if they
Ooh.
feel like it was their conscious choice to do so, rather than
Ooh, man. I love it. I love it. Just gave you some inspiration. I just didn't want to forget it. I just don't want to forget it. Yeah, this is how you unite a world. This is how you, that's a special note for me. I'll just leave it. Don't worry about it, guys.
it being forced on them through conquest. The way in which the Tau bring new species into their empire is a simple process. Drones are sent out ahead of the Tau fleets to scout out various worlds. When a colonized planet is found, the drones immediately report back to inform the Tau of potential allies. And the Tau begin preparations to spread enlightenment. First contact is always done through the water caste diplomats, whose silver tongues and overwhelming charismatic presence is often enough to establish peaceful relationships right off the bat. Through rigorous and constant interaction, they teach the new species of the wonders of the Tau Empire. They will often rigorous and constant interaction is often enough to establish peaceful relationships right off the bat. Tongues and overread enlightenment. First contact is always done through the water caste diplomats, whose silver tongues and overwhelming charismatic presence is often enough to establish peaceful relationships right off the bat. Through rigorous and constant interaction, they teach the new species of the wonders of the Tau Empire. They will often bring their citizens back to their own worlds to show them what life could be like under their banners. And upon visiting the Tau world, many would be left completely awestruck by their serene beauty. Not only are these cities resplendent and opulent, but they are a thriving metropolis. They're well protected by energy shields and railgun systems. Even the poorest of settlements are dotted with beautiful statues and fountains and breathtaking architecture.
Love it.
In these cities, it is made abundantly clear that education and innovation are put on a pillar. Science, culture, and military academies dot the landscape and are open to the public.
Military academies.
And everywhere you look, true-born Tau citizens are rubbing shoulders with various alien species, including...
Can you help me understand, like, how do you use a military academy in a fantasy world? Like, the fact that there's so much, like, every country has military academies technically, but the way he made it seem like is like you could go to the military academy like you go to a regular university. That's how I heard it. I was like, shoot, I just want to go during the career of the soldier, so I'm gonna go get a bachelor's degree in military application and then just go fight people as a mercenary, as a police officer. I don't know, but I got my degree in killing people. That's how I heard it.
And
Military-
everywhere you look, science, culture, and military academies dot the landscape and are
The
open to the
military
public.
academies
And
everywhere,
everywhere you
open
look,
to the
true-born
public.
Tau citizens are rubbing
So-
shoulders with various alien species, including humans throughout.
I'm
The
joining.
poverty and squalor, characteristic of other civilizations, is nowhere to be seen here. Now, many weaker species agreed to join quite quickly, as being visited by an incredibly advanced group of aliens that come with silver tongues and promises of a bright, illustrious future. Are
Yeah,
often
tell me
enough
where it
to
goes
sway
bad,
any speculation
Westhammer.
they may have. However, some still have their doubts and are not ready to join, and this is acceptable
Hit 'em
to
with
the
the
Tau.
cannon.
And they may spend generations amongst them communicating, trading,
Oh,
and
they're not.
even
They're
coming to
patient.
their aid in times of war before the species is finally ready to join the Empire. And the Tau are completely fine with this. They're down with playing the long game. If the Tau know anything, it's patience. Now,
Good,
down here in
good.
the real world, we've seen plenty of movies about alien invasions. They come with guns and weapons of insane destructive potential, but the human spirit endures and fights
Of
back
course.
against the invaders, eventually pushing back the threat.
Nope, that's
But
not happening
what
here.
if those same hyper-advanced aliens came with open hands to welcome you into their society, to promise to share with you the secrets of the universe, of their culture, and of most importantly, the radical concept of peace? What if they claim they will fix every problem your species is suffering from, cure any disease,
And do
end
it.
any war, and to lift all of your citizens out of poverty? What if you're a species that has been under constant attack by stronger aliens like the orcs or the Tyranids, who
Yo, shout out to my homies, the Necron, fam. Yo, if these people were around when the Necron needed them, we wouldn't have had the 40K universe. We wouldn't have Slaanesh. What else wouldn't have happened? Their gods wouldn't have got destroyed, which fed the Chaos gods, I believe. This is kind of complicated, but I'm pretty sure when we follow these breadcrumbs, without the Necron without the Necrotier becoming the Necron, a lot of this doesn't happen. A lot.
Disease, end any war, and to lift all of your citizens out of poverty. What if you're a species that has been under constant attack?
I just got to throw this out there. If any of you guys watch my anime reactions, you're going to see the vast difference between my recall here and like watching a whole bunch of other shows, man. When you're just bouncing from show to show to show to show to show to show to show, and you're me and everyone has an interesting name, it's hard to retain stuff, man. But I feel like I do better here than I do even like One Piece, man. I'm like, oh, what the hell is going on in One Piece, man? Anyways, I guess explanation videos in anime would be beneficial. I should do Fire Force.
All of your citizens out of poverty. What if you're a species that has been under constant attack by stronger aliens like the orcs or the Tyranids, who only want to consume and destroy you and everything you've ever loved? What if without aid, your world is doomed to be destroyed by this threat? When you put things into this perspective, it becomes pretty clear why somebody would choose to join them. And speaking of the long game, there have been examples of Tau who have landed on backwater worlds occupied by human settlers, and instead of just wiping them out or issuing a join us or die decree, they've instead set up a base of operations there and traded back and forth with the humans for hundreds of years. These humans will often deny the Tau at first, as the doctrines they've grown up with within the Imperium teach that all Xenos are vile, malevolent creatures that have committed the sin of existence. However,
the sin of
over time,
existence.
Small interactions between the species lead to bigger ones, and eventually trade opens up between them. And trade leads to cultural exchanges, and eventually the two societies begin to mingle freely with one another, before the humans eventually agreed to join. As generation after generation has grown up with their Tau neighbors, they've learned to love and accept them, despite the rigorous and xenophobic doctrines of their species. In the novel Kaifas Kane, we see an example of one such planet who, after hundreds of years of this back and forth, the humans on such a world have adopted many of the Tau's way of life, such as rounded architecture and even wearing their hair, the signature shaved head, braided ponytail. Some going so far as painting or dyeing their skin blue. And in this way, the Tau understand that they can gain allies through peaceful interactions. It may take much longer than simply conquering them, but in the end, this furthers the greater good.
Furthers the greater good.
Now, I'm sure you can imagine the Imperium surprise when they arrived on this planet and the humans here look at them, members of their own species, with disgust and disdain, calling them murderers and telling them to go home.
Go
The
back to
Imperial
where you
soldiers
came
see
from.
human buildings molded to look like that of their enemy. And from the military perspective of the Imperium, this is textbook Xenos brainwashing. In this particular novel, it was a good thing for these human settlers that it was Commissar Kane that showed up rather than a member of the Inquisition. Because it turns out shaving your head, painting yourself blue, and singing Kumbaya with a whole bunch of aliens,
Shout out to
that is
Avatar.
some top-shelf heresy, my friend. Now, like I mentioned before, getting a new species to join the Empire through peaceful negotiations is the top priority. But regrettably, there are times when a species just refuses to join. Even if they've spent hundreds of years trading back and forth with the Tau, they just refuse to join the Empire. And this is basically when all that peace and love stuff comes off the table.
Explain to me. I know the Tau specializes in long-range combat, but he has two swords on him. Why? And I'm going to write it down too in case you guys forget. At what point does this dude whip out these katanas? And like, why? You know what I mean? Why? Can he deflect stuff? Is it like a Jedi? You know what I'm saying? Let me write this down. Okay. So at what point does a Tau soldier use swords as opposed to long range weaponry? Is it when they run out of power? You just got close and now I have no choice because I'm going against an overwhelmingly strong melee fighter? Like, I need to know when a Tau would whip its sword out.
table. And the Tau will teach this planet of their when all that peace and love stuff comes off the table. And the Tau will teach this planet of their superiority through great and spectacular violence.
It's
I
great
guess what
and
you have to
spectacular
understand
violence.
is when you refuse joining the greater good, you're not simply saying, hey, thanks for the offer, but we're kind of doing our own thing here and I think we have it under control. You're rejecting the greater good, and they believe so strongly in this creed that it is the only way to save the universe that you refusing to join is not an option. Now, unleashing the fury of the Tau's military is considered a last resort, but so strong is the belief in their creed that they are not adverse to using it if absolutely necessary. But
For the
even after
greater
doing
good,
so,
of
they do
course.
not simply destroy the world and its inhabitants. After a surrender is initiated and the species finally agrees to join them, they'll send in the Earthcast to heal this world and its people, sending an enormous amount of resources to rebuild whatever was destroyed in the fighting.
Shout
And to
to
support the
Iraq.
survivors, welcoming the refugees in with open arms under their protected shield drums of their own worlds. Now, the
Shield
Tau do not
drums.
view them as enemies that need to be eradicated, more so as misguided and lost souls that needed to have their
Oh,
ignorance
look at the
corrected through
arms.
force,
This
a
is
demonstration
cool.
of the raw physical might of their creed. The misgivings and violence are eventually forgiven and the species is welcomed with open arms. From their perspective, they tried to do it the nice way, and that didn't,
It didn't work.
So
They
now
tried
it's
to give
time
the carrot
utilize
for a
the
long
rail
time.
cannons. It's
Rail
as if they view
cannons.
the different species like an unruly child that needed to be disciplined. Now,
Oh,
probably the most messed up
what
thing about the Tau themselves is that they actually have a caste system within their society. Now, these castes don't really have a hierarchy. There's no one caste that's above the others. All citizens within the Tau Empire are considered equal. That is to say, with the exception of the ruling class, which is the Ethereals. Their word is law, and they are
Ethereals.
definitely above everybody else. However, despite being forced to adhere to this rigorous caste system, no Tau citizen would ever really think to question it. It's how it has always been, even since the time before the Ethereals. Now, their adherence and belief in the greater good is so strong that the caste system is rarely, if ever, questioned, as their
If they don't explain it already, humans, do they listen to these Ethereals? Because they're not Tau blood.
unique biological traits and specialties of each caste member
Because I
are
know that the Ethereals have like a telepathy power over the Tau, so I don't think
Now,
that would
their
affect
adherence
humans.
and belief in the greater good is so strong that the caste system is rarely, if ever, questioned, as their unique biological traits and specialties of each caste member are put to the best possible use for the furtherment of the greater good within
Of
their birth-given
course.
societal roles.
Of
And member of the Tau
course.
that would break from the caste system and choose to pursue passion or love or anything that is not the best possible use of their unique traits is seen as selfish. That to waste their time and focus on anything that is not the best possible use of their unique
Shout to
traits
Sybil.
is to go directly against the greater good, which says to do the most good for the most people with every action you take. For example, members of the Tau's air caste have hollow bones and much skinnier frames, which ends up making them some of the best pilots in the galaxy. If one of them was to randomly decide that they wanted to be a painter instead of a pilot, then the best possible use of their skills would not be being fulfilled. A selfish nature like this is frowned upon deeply within Tau society, and at the least they would be shunned by their peers, and at worst they would be sentenced to rigorous reconditioning, to instill in them the error of their ways, and to adhere to the principles of the greater good. To break from the caste system would be to reject the will of the Ethereals and the greater good as a whole, which is something that is an incredible rarity amongst Tau citizens. And it is through rigorous adherence to the Tau's caste system that they become not a nation of individuals, but of one group working towards the same goal. Now, the Tau have bred specifically within their caste for so long that you'd be forgiven if you thought each of them was a completely different species. And make no mistake, this is by design, as the Ethereals only allow the Tau to breed within their own caste. It is also not outright
Wait.
sales. Each of them was a completely different, specifically within their caste for so long that you'd be forgiven if you thought each of them was a completely different species. And make no mistake, this is by design, as the Ethereals
I'm confused
only
on
allow
that
the
part.
Tau to breed within their own caste. It is also not
Breed within
outright
their
said, but it is heavily implied that they practice eugenics, in the sense that
Eugenics.
certain individuals are encouraged to continue to breed to keep that line moving forward, while others are restricted from it. And this practice is
Oh.
without a doubt messed up, but to them, this furthers the greater
The
good.
greater
In
good.
that through selective breeding, they make sure that the caste remain as strong as possible. In that each
Some people shouldn't have kids. Some people shouldn't have kids. Yo, son, let's go to Walmart real quick. Let's go to Walmart. I'm not going to say nothing, but we're going to look at a random sample size of Walmart before I look at people and start pointing them out. And you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about before I even look. Random people at Walmart. Let's see. Let's see what pops up first. Let's see what pops up first. This. Oh my god. This guy brought his gator. What's going on there? This person brought 3 cats. This person, I don't know if it's a holiday, why they're dressed like this. This person is asleep on the bench. Everything's out. I'm not going to comment on children. I just don't do that. So we're just going to skip that. I think we're done. I think we're done. I think we're done. I think we're done. So I said what I said. The Tau are just killing it. I think I found, other than like the orcs, if I'm going to live somewhere in the galaxy, I think it's the Tau right now. The Eldar got their perks. The humans, you gotta be lucky to be in the human race. The Tau, I'll just stick with my God-given talent and react.
Member of the cast is not a unique individual. More so, they are a single piece of a larger whole. It's definitely a
single
we,
piece
not
of a
me
larger whole.
situation. Now, despite some
We.
key characteristics like the
We
blue
want
skin
it.
and certain types of hair and the marking on their forehead, members of each of the different casts actually look radically different from one another. They all also have unique biological traits that make them better at certain roles. The Earth cast are disciplined and intelligent artisans and scientists who build and design their cities, weapons, and defense systems, while the Fire cast are more muscular and have faster reflex times, and make for the Tau's military force. The Air cast have hollow and thin bones and make for some of the best pilots in the galaxy, allowing them to withstand enormous levels of G-force, while the Silver Tongues of the Water cast make for the best emissaries. You don't see the meek and scrawny members of the Air cast demanding to be frontline soldiers in the Fire cast. They are all fully aware of their unique biological structure that makes them better pilots, and in staying within their cast, they can do the most good for the most people. It is through dedication to their cast that the Tau pursue the best use of their individual unique skills and thus further the greater good. It is through this rigorous adherence to the caste system that the Tau become not a nation of individuals, but a cohesive whole working towards the same goals. Whether or not this is right or wrong really depends on your perspective. To them, it is so deeply ingrained in them from birth that this is the best way to live. I'm sure many of us in the real world would see such a system that is so inflexible and refuses to let the individual pursue the life that they want as inherently evil. And like with most things in this universe, it's more complicated than that, and it's up to you to decide how you feel about it. So let's take a step back from Tau
for the greater
politics
good.
and let's talk about their combat strategies.
For the greater good.
The way the Tau fight is unlike any other race in the galaxy. They demonstrate impressive range superiority that can pick apart an enemy force before they even know what's happening. When they surge into battle, they are escorted by hordes of Kroot that descend on the enemy like a pack of ferocious piranhas, literally eating them alive, while transports known as Devilfish ferry short-range breacher teams and fire warriors into strategic positions to lay down suppressing fire, while hammerheads and massive battlesuits bombard the enemy from long range with massive and devastating guns that have pinpoint accuracy. Now, if this wasn't effective enough, the jewel of the Tau Empire, the Crisis Suits, mechanized marvels of engineering, descend from the sky bristling with every weapon system imaginable to punish those that would turn from the Tau Va. Tau utilized two primary philosophies of war, the Mont Ka, or the killing blow, or the...
Mont Ka, two philosophies, Mont Ka. Let's get that. Tau have two philosophies. Yeah, go ahead and roast me. I have to spell that one out. Mont Ka. All right, let's hear it.
Cao Yan as the
Wait. Did I already miss it? Hold on.
Primary philosophies of war, the Mont Ka, or the killing blow, or the Cao Yan.
Mont Ka, killing blow. I see it. And the Cao Yan, two philosophies of war. Sorry about my phone going off. Also, sorry about the process in which I take notes, but it is what I do. I already said it, so I'm not going to apologize anymore. be like the only major kill. Just do it.
As the patient hunter. Firecast cadres trained in the Mont Cod utilize Killing Blow, or the Cao Yun as the patient hunter. Firecast cadres trained in the Mont Cod utilize tactics that hit strategic locations hard and fast, using highly mobile crisis suits, aircrafts, and ground transports to move in and obliterate points of strategic importance to the enemy, such as taking out their opponent's command structure in the blink of an eye, sowing chaos throughout their ranks. Why go through a costly war of attrition with the body of the serpent when you could cut off its head in less time with less casualties? Now, those trained in the way of the patient hunter instead choose to bait the enemy into a trap, often using a single unit as a decoy. They trick the enemy into overextending.
Okay, Montcott, Killing Blow, basically. They are often firecast and go for the head or avoid a battle of attrition, which is important because their race is small compared to some others. And the other one in two philosophies, firecast and hold on, I kind of messed up. And the cow, patient hunter, specializes in decoys and tricks. And go for head and or avoid battles of attritions and the chaos. So here's what I wrote. I think I'm going to change my screen. I'm going to do this so that I can go in and out very fast. So I added the Tau have two philosophies, the War of Montaka or the Killing Blow. Often the Firecast go for the head and avoid a battle of attrition. And the Cao Yun is a patient hunter, specializes in decoys and tricks. Love that.
Before firing on them from every conceivable direction with hidden units. Now, many of the Tau's tactics are used to save as many Tau lives as possible. What you have to understand about the way the Tau fight is that they do not have the numbers that the Imperium does.
Yes.
It's estimated that the Imperium of Man has 30 trillion active guardsmen in service, with constant new recruits being taken from the million worlds it controls. The Tau, by contrast, control around 100 worlds. They cannot afford to fight like the Imperium does, with its meat grinder, war of attrition style combat that will send millions of troops to their death if it means ensuring victory. And although at first glance this may seem like another example of how benevolent the Tau really is, in reality this is just a numbers game. On the surface it may seem like the Tau value the lives of their citizens so highly that they're not willing to risk losing any of them.
No.
But the real reason is that when your supplies and troops are limited, you have to be clever with how you fight.
For the greater
so now
good.
that we know a little bit more about how the Tau operate and their military tactics, let's talk about where they came from. The Tau started much like any other sentient species. As they progressed, their technological achievements outpaced their moral compass. Now this would have disastrous consequences for the Tau species as it split into 4 distinct groups that absolutely hated each other and were constantly at war with one another. This was a dark time that the Tau refer to as the Mont Tau, and the 4 factions at species as it split into 4 their moral compass. Now this would have disastrous consequences for the Tau species as it split into 4 distinct groups that absolutely hated each other and were constantly at war with one another. This was a dark time that the Tau refer to as the Mont Tau, and the 4 factions were completely different from one another and would serve as the fundamental basis for the Tau's caste system thousands of years later. Strong and warlike plains hunters, tough and skilled builders, charismatic merchants and diplomats, and winged messengers. These would eventually form the Fire, Earth, Water, and Air castes. Now, Tau legend says that at one point, great lights appeared in the sky that heralded the arrival of a new species of Tau known as the Ethereals.
There it is.
Whether or not this was a completely different species or a divergent path in their evolution is still left unclear. What is clear, though, is that through their immense charismatic presence, they were able to set all of the different clans down and negotiate peace, a feat that was thought nearly impossible. Now, they introduced the concept of the greater good to the Tau, and once their society had unified under its message, their progress began to skyrocket. Under the guidance of the Ethereals, the Tau went from discovering fire to becoming a spacefaring galactic presence within the span of 3,000 years.
Jeez.
And I think it's really important to put that into perspective. 3,000 years.
3,000, fam.
3,000 years to go from being basically cavemen to forming a galactic empire. So just out of curiosity, how do we compare to the Tau? It's believed by experts that humanity's first use of fire took place around 1 million years ago. And we here in the year 2022 have made some pretty remarkable scientific achievements between now and then. But we certainly aren't out spreading throughout the galaxy right now.
Nope.
In fact, humanity wouldn't actually colonize their second planet, Mars, until the 22nd century. So allow me to do some quick math
Shout out to
here,
Elon
but
Musk.
that means the Tau advanced 300 times faster than humanity. And despite
Jeez.
this frankly ludicrous advancement rate, you'll still hear people in the community say ridiculous things like the Tau are not a threat, and if the Imperium wanted to, they could easily wipe them out. And this isn't inherently wrong. The Tau only control a small section of space in the
Yeah.
Eastern Fringe. And although their threat is not as obvious as that, say, the Orcs or the Tyranids, they represent something far more insidious. And it's twofold. The first is that they're obviously and very quickly outpacing humanity in forms of technological advancement. They have the potential to...
It reminds me, because I just remembered Major Kill had equated them to a country, and it's like the West is ahead or whatever, Western powers is ahead, but they catching up over here. They advancing fast over here, and they're unified. They gotta listen to the homies, and it's for their greater good. They're commies!
To completely dominate the entire galaxy if left unchecked, through the raw might of their innovations and technology, something the Imperium has shunned and viewed as tech heresy for thousands of years.
Yeah, they're gonna get left
Unfortunately
behind.
for the Imperium, they are
Of
besieged
course.
on all sides by every threat imaginable. And with the fall of Cadia, the forces of chaos have split the galaxy in half, while Tyranid hive fleets are on a crash course for Terra itself. Not to mention the
Jeez.
rising threat of the ancient Necrons all coming online, or the various Orc Wogs that are all gaining strength. The reality is the Tau do not represent an immediate threat to the Imperium, and thus its attentions are drawn elsewhere. And
Yeah.
the great irony of this is that the Tau were originally discovered by mankind in that period where they were basically cavemen. But they were fighting
And
with
they
sticks
left
and
them.
stones, so the Imperium pretty much ignored them. However, immediately
Oh.
after this, a whole bunch of warp storms would spawn that obscured the Tau's presence. And by the time they had finally passed 3,000 years later, the Tau had advanced to ludicrous levels. And it's true that they still don't have the numbers that the Imperium does. But the Tau do represent a second threat to the Imperium's stability, and it's far more insidious in nature, as it's not a physical conflict. It's a seemingly invisible threat played out not on the fields of war, but in the hearts and minds of Imperial citizens. The Tau represent the most dangerous foe of all, a different ideology. The greater good
Ideological
is a message
war.
that runs counter to that of the Imperium's teachings. And
Yes.
many humans have already defected from the Imperium to join the Tau Empire
I've
and follow
defected.
the greater good. And it's pretty obvious why. The Imperium is a repressive and bloody regime. You are a cog in the machine, a slave to the Imperium's will. Your life is meaningless, and there is no greater purpose for you than to die in service to the God Emperor and his creation.
The God
Whereas the
Emperor.
Tau represent a breaking of those shackles, a chance to pursue the life that you want, and through your actions save this blighted universe from itself.
Yeah, that sounds
By all
better.
accounts, humans that join the Tau are actually treated very well and are not forced into its rigorous caste system. When Tau take
Oh.
a human world, they actually allow them to continue worshiping the Emperor and live however they want. The only requirement is that they adhere to the greater good and do the most good for the most people
Now,
with
what does
every
that
action
mean?
they take. Which, in terms, means that everything they do is for the benefit of the Tau Empire, and they will be
Oh.
called upon to fight when the Tau go to war.
Ah.
Not to mention pretty much every resource they make that they would be sending to the Imperium, they will instead be sending to the Tau Empire.
Oh, okay. Collect those
Despite
taxes.
what many people in the fandom will tell you, rumors of castration, mind control through pheromones, repressive conditioning, most of the source material on these things can be chalked up to Imperial propaganda. By all accounts, life as a human citizen within the Tau Empire is quantifiably better than that of being within the Imperium. In almost
I
every
see it.
conceivable situation, other than being born on a backwater feudal world where the Imperium has all
Look at
but
these
forgotten
ships.
you and your planet. And although many of these worlds exist within the Imperium, your chances of being born into one are incredibly slim, as the vast majority of Imperial citizens live in mega hives, forced to exist in the slums and fight for survival every day. Now, on the rumors of Tau malevolence and their actual grimdark nature, most of this comes from a few key novels, where an ethereal basically tells a Tau citizen to kill herself, and she does it. But in the moment
Why?
before she does, the narrator explains that
Why?
she felt compelled to do it, like she didn't want to, but she didn't have a choice. Now, this has led to many
Aw.
rumors of mind control
Yeah.
by the ethereals. Now, this is just me being speculative, but there is
Okay.
no actual canon source that says that the ethereals are actually literally able to mind control their citizens through supernatural means. But we do have many examples in this universe of individuals with an overwhelming charismatic presence that you simply won't or can't say no to. The Primarchs of the Imperium are a prime example of this, let alone the God Emperor himself. Their
Yeah.
presence is so commanding that it is all but impossible for even the most disciplined and trained warriors to deny their will.
Yeah,
Now,
that's
there
how
are
they
some
control their
examples of Space
legions.
Marines who were able to deny their Primarchs, but even that is incredibly rare. The entirety of the Horus heresy can be chalked up to such commanding presence by Horus and the other traitor Primarchs. It is my belief that the Ethereals are such entities, with a presence at least equal to that of a Primarch, possibly even greater, maybe even on par, at least in the charismatic department, with the God Emperor himself.
That's
This
crazy.
is in combination with the rigorous and perpetual propaganda that the Ethereals put out. If you were to live within the Tau Empire, you would see propaganda of Tau supremacy everywhere you look. It is something that is conditioned into the minds of its citizens over time, to where the path of the greater good is something that is completely ingrained in you. Humanity is just as guilty of systems of propaganda, although their propaganda holds much more insidious messages about the witch, the alien, and the heretic. Now, despite how much good the Ethereals have done for the Tau people, they are definitely not without fault. For one, they rule with a complete and utter iron fist. What the Ethereals say is law. Not to mention the relentless propaganda that Tau citizens are subject to is directly because of the Ethereals. They utterly and completely control the narrative that the Tau citizens are fed on a daily basis, letting them see.
How do they control the media? You know what I mean? Like, how does the media work in some of these worlds? Like, with such advanced technology, you'd always have a way of finding out the information, unless people are absolutely punished for spilling certain or saying certain things.
See only what the Ethereals want them to see and think only what the Ethereals fed on a daily basis, letting them see only what the Ethereals want them to see and think only what the Ethereals want them to think.
There we go. Answered.
There's this guy named Commander Farsight, and we'll get into him in another video,
the homie
but real
Farsight.
quickly, he was a great commander of the Tau Empire. And after being sent to the Damocles system, he requested reinforcements from the Ethereals many times, but was denied each and every time. He eventually abandoned them and the greater good as a whole. At least the version of the greater good that was the direct will of the Ethereals. He would then go on to found what is known as the Farsight Enclaves. And before this, the Ethereals had put up many statues of him pretty much all over the place. Everybody knew Commander Farsight's name. He was seen as a great hero amongst the Tau people. But as soon as the Ethereals learned that he had started his own enclaves, they tore down those statues and labeled him as a blasphemer and a heretic, one who had committed the ultimate sin of turning against the greater good and the will of the Ethereals. And here's the thing. The Ethereals have told the Tau that without them, their society would completely collapse. And that makes sense to them. They have been told from birth that the Ethereals' will is law, and basically everything around them was because of them. And there might be some truth to that. But the Farsight Enclaves have proved that you can make a society of Tau without the Ethereals.
That's cool.
Because they don't have any, and by all accounts, they seem to be thriving. Now, many people try to use the Farsight Enclaves have proved that you can make a society of Tau without the Ethereals, because they don't have any, and by all accounts, they seem to be thriving.
There
now,
many
people try to use the actions of the Ethereal as justification for betraying the Tau as sneaky and evil and just as bad as everybody else. And I feel like this does a really big disservice to them, as the Tau certainly aren't perfect. Nobody in this universe is. But they do seem to be a lot better than pretty much every alternative.
Everyone.
Now, I personally feel like the Tau are a lot more creative and a lot more interesting than people tend to give them credit for. On one hand, they're a seemingly benevolent society that's more interested in making allies than enemies. But a lot of this is surface level, just like their beautiful, spectacular worlds. On the surface, they're beautiful and spectacular, and their veneer of perfection is pretty much everywhere you look. But under the surface, they still utilize a caste system, despite what the individual may want. Through rigorous and relentless propaganda, the Ethereals teach the Tau people to think only the way they want them to think. But maybe to you, this makes sense. Maybe you understand the message of the greater good and what the Tau are trying to do. Perhaps you understand the narrative of peace through control, rather than outright annihilation like the Imperium does. At least in the context of the 41st millennium, where under normal circumstances, there is no peace, there is no diplomacy, there is only war. And I'll be honest here, this is a topic that goes way deeper than just 40K lore, so this is something that you're going to have to reach on your own. Now, what I will say, though, is despite how you may personally feel about the Tau, the Tau citizens, at the core of their being, believe what they are doing is right, that the creed of the greater good is a superior way of life, that true strength can only come from unity under their banners. And the Tau will simply not sit back and let the galaxy burn. Through their superior way of life and the teachings of the greater good, that every action should do the most good for the most people, they will save this universe from itself.
Respect it.
At least, this is what they have been told to believe.
Dope.
So this was my first attempt at doing a long-form lore video. I'm used to doing, you know, the TikTok shorts and stuff like that. So let me know you enjoyed it by hitting like and subscribe. It only takes a second, but it seriously helps me out. I'd like to take a minute to just give an extra big thank you to all of my patrons. Honest to God, without you guys, I wouldn't be able to do this. As you all know, TikTok pays its creators like 2 cents per 1,000 views, something ridiculous. Yeah. So if it wasn't for the support I get from all of y'all, I honest to God wouldn't be able to do this. Now, there's definitely a lot more to talk about with the Tau, but I'm trying to keep these videos under 30 minutes as I'm kind of known for doing shorts. But let me know if you'd like to see longer deep dives or if you want me to keep it to like 5 to 10 minutes, but really punchy like the videos you're used to seeing. And let me know down in the comments what other factions you'd like to see covered. Thanks again for taking the time to check this out, and until next time, happy wargaming.
Cool. Cool. Very cool. Well, guys, that was an awesome video. Most of my thoughts were in the middle of it. I like the Tau. I am in this universe. You know, I got my homies, I got my favorite Primarchs, but I feel like I'm with the Tau the most because their message is just the best. Serving the God Emperor, who I know is not real, by the way. You know, versus, you know, serving the greater good. And like, how do you define the greater good? It's my brother and sister next to me. It's you. And I could see it. I like it. It just gives me hope, you know? So, are they my favorite race? I don't know. My orcs are like my favorite, but like when it comes to what I've been talking about a lot is like, but other than like who's cool, like where would I want to live? Which group of people would I want to be? I don't feel like I'd want to be an orc, although I like orcs. But my problems would go away, and I feel like I'd be happy. So it's going to come down between the orcs and the Tau. I like the Eldar too. I do, particularly the Yunari. I know 40K apparently made that not as good as it started off, but yeah. Yeah. So anyways, all right, I'm out, guys. I'm gonna go hang out with my family. I hope you guys appreciated vibing with this video for me. I found it very informative, and I do gotta add some more West Hammer videos because it did hit differently, and I appreciated it. All right, subscribe if you haven't. I appreciate y'all. I'm out. As always, thanks for supporting this channel. If you don't know, we do have a Patreon, and it's free to join. You can stay updated, suggest content, or vote on polls. If you're interested in our uncut and early reactions to anime, K-drama, Western shows, and movie reactions, which include exclusive reactions not found on YouTube, you can join the upper tiers on Patreon, or you can stick with the edited content right here on YouTube. We got Yaboyrocklee reactions also in the description of this video. Until next time, I'm out.